guys, it's Tracy. Welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to be doing a review on the Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. Now I'm fairly sure that everyone knows all about this already. There are definitely a number of reviews out there on BookTube. If you didn't know, this is the prequel to the Hunger Games series written by Suzanne Collins. It centers around President Snow before we knew who he was, and his name is Coriolanus. This is during the 10th year anniversary of the Hunger Games. Coriolanus is in his last year of schooling. He is assigned a tribute from the 12th district by the name of Lucy to mentor through the games, as well as his classmates being assigned tributes from other districts as well. Now, at this point, the Hunger Games is definitely not how we would have known it during the Hunger Games series when Katniss is participating in it. Rather, it is still very new, very archaic, and they're still trying to nail down the elements to make it engaging and engrossing for viewers, because currently no one really wants to watch it. There's no excitement to it, no attachment. Also, with the capital, it is not the glamorous and glitzy capital that we would have known as well. Instead, this is post-war, so we're actually seeing the capital at a stage where it's trying to rebuild. The people are suffering from the consequences of the war after the rebels attack. So for me, learning about the setting and the premise made me feel like I was potentially going to be reading something quite interesting, quite different, and even thought-provoking. I felt like maybe Suzanne Collins would be able to deliver a lot of themes that maybe she hadn't explored in the Hunger Games that could be well done in this one. I wouldn't say that I'm surprised or disappointed, but I didn't get any of that in the book. I felt like I was very blasé when I was going through this entire book. I honestly, for the most part, felt very, very bored. I didn't feel like there was anything new to offer to me. Problems that I really had with the Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes really came down to, one, Coriolanus' voice, two, a very level or surface level exploration of these themes, and three, there wasn't really any personal or emotional attachment to any of the other characters, so I wasn't invested in the book. So when I say that Coriolanus' voice is really boring, what I mean is that it actually sounds really monotone when I'm reading it. He honestly, to me, felt like a vehicle to drive the story instead of being the person to drive the story. He sounded like a narrator to me, like, this is happening here, this is happening here, this is what's happening, and it was all telling and not showing. That's what I felt like. The first half of the book I felt like could also be really condensed, because it was a lot of just Coriolanus's monologue or his own self-reflection, but it was just a lot more of complaining about the same things. You know, he is a person of privilege, a person of status, but because of the war, there are things that have changed for him and things that are now at risk, and he knows what loss and what, you know, dangers and whatnot are. But the things that he feels threatened about are things that a lot of people wouldn't even ever have been able to experience. And for me, to have someone complain about that continuously makes me feel like they're so out of touch with reality, and I just couldn't get into his character. I mean, maybe that's an intentional thing that Suzanne Collins did, because he is an antagonist in the Hunger Games, and for this book it's not for us to read through him and maybe sympathize and understand why he becomes an antagonist. It's not a redemption story, and I think a lot of people have said that as well, but I would have liked to maybe read through his perspective and go, okay, these are the choices he's made. I'll bet I don't understand them, but I can see why. And in this book I just couldn't understand a lot of his decisions, a lot of the emotions that he felt. Suzanne Collins also tried to bring up discussions around war, around the consequences of the impacts of war on civilians, whether there is a right or a wrong, you know, which side is right, which side is wrong, and who gets to be punished out of that, as well as human instincts and what we're like, whether we can feel compassion and empathy, or whether within ourselves at the core of who we are as humans. We are very animalistic, very barbaric, and we will ultimately abide to the law or the rules of nature. And whether we will just convert to survival instincts and it's every man for themselves. She did try really hard to explore that theme, because I felt like that theme was something that was really interesting to bring up. But it was very one-sided. It was very, okay, this is my argument, or this is the idea that I want to present to you guys as readers. You know, whilst you may think differently, this is actually what I think, and this is how I am going to let my book display that or convey that idea. And I, as much as it made me think about it, I would have liked to have two representations of either side to this argument instead of just the one bundled into the book, for us to maybe at the end of the book be like, okay, I mean, I guess she's right, because I don't think that's right, but you know, that's how I felt like the book had tried to represent a lot of the themes, very one-sided and at a very surface level. So it was just touch and go, and only really had Coriolanus be the centerpiece or the examples to these things. And lastly, like I said, there was really no investment or personal investment from me into this book. The fact that it took me ages to read this is one thing, because it just meant that I could just put it down and not care about it. I didn't feel pulled by any parts of the story to come back and go, okay, I really want to know what happens to this character. You know, I'm rooting for this particular person. There was nothing like that in this book. Yes, there were some characters that are written in there to bring out a sense of, you know, caring or compassion within you, but I just felt like it wasn't achieved very well. I think the only part of the book that I felt engrossed in was when the Hunger Games actually started and the tributes entered the arena, and that's the excitement there, because you really do want to know what the results of the Hunger Game is. But beyond that, I just couldn't care less about any of the characters. I was like, okay, well, if this happens to you, cool. If it doesn't, that's fine as well. I'm just here to finish the book, really. I honestly almost DNF'd it, because I was like, not about this. Until we got to the Hunger Games part, and then by then I was pretty much at the end, and I was like, alright, we'll see what happens. We'll see how he gets through this. If anything, I think this book serves to solidify what President Snow is like in present time. The President Snow that we know during the Hunger Games. To be honest, she could have foregone reading this book and it wouldn't have been a big thing. It's cool that we got to revisit the world and see what it was like before, what we would have known, and how the Hunger Games was actually a very basic and simple idea, and then it just grew, and a lot of the ideas did come from during this 10th anniversary period. We also got to see what the capital was like, and that part I also thought was interesting, and that you could see the rebuild and how people did have to struggle and what they had to resort to come out of the war. I couldn't care less about the music element that was involved in this, but I did like the explanation behind the Mockingjay and where it came from. I mean, I did follow the hype and read it, so that's just on me, but I think I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. It was just very okay. It was fine. But if you guys have read this book, please leave a comment down below to let me know what you thought about it, whether you are planning to read it or not. I think it would actually be very well done in a movie though, so I'm intrigued to see whether they pick this up as a film to release, because I think it will do a lot better than reading through the voice of Coriolanus. So that's that. But otherwise, I hope you guys are staying safe and taking care. I shall see you guys next time. Bye.